Class. For our novel study, we are going to be reading the book titled Pax. I know that I gave you guys a link to go and access this book on Hoopla for free, but if you're having any troubles, I thought that I would just try to read it for you as well. Hopefully I'm able to do that. And otherwise, today I'm going to start with chapter 1, and I will post the chapters as we're reading ahead. So we're going to try to do about 2 chapters every week. And that way we can respond to those questions, and I'm not giving you too many questions for each chapter. So chapter 1 of Pax. And before I read it, I also am going to just read the inside of the book jacket. Pax and Peter have been inseparable ever since Peter rescued him as a kit. But one day, the unimaginable happens. Peter's dad enlists in the military and makes him return the fox to the wild. At his grandfather's house, 300 miles away from home, Peter knows it isn't where he should be. With Pax, he strikes out on his own despite the encroaching war, spurred by love, loyalty, and grief, to be reunited with his fox. Meanwhile, Pax, steadfastly waiting for his boy, embarks on adventures and discoveries of his own. And it's from the best-selling and award-winning author, Sara Pennypacker, comes a beautifully wrought, utterly compelling novel about the essential truths that define us and the devastating costs of war. Pax is destined to become a beloved classic. So I'll read chapter 1. Here's some pictures I'll show you. So the initial quote here, just because it isn't happening here doesn't mean it isn't happening. And there's just a little fox picture. The fox felt the car slow before the boy did. So the picture's giving you an indication of who's speaking. The fox felt the car slow before the boy did, as he felt everything first, though through the pads of his paw, along his spine, and the sensitive whiskers at his wrists by the vibrations. He learned also that the road had grown coarser. He stretched up from his boy's lap and sniffed at the threads of scent leaking in through the windows, which told him they were now traveling into the woodlands. The sharp odor of pine, wood, bark, cones, and needles slithered through the air like blades, but beneath that, the fox recognized softer clover, wild garlic, and ferns, and also 100 things he had never encountered before. But smelled green and urgent. The boy sensed something now too. He pulled his pet back to him and gripped his baseball glove more tightly. The boy's anxiety surprised the fox. The few times they had traveled in the car before, the boy had been calm or even excited. The fox nudged his muzzle into the glove's webbing. Although he hated the leather smell, his boy always laughed when he did this. He would close the glove around his pet's head, play wrestling, and in this way the fox would distract him. But today the boy lifted his pet and buried his face in the fox's white ruff, so the ruff around his neck, pressing hard. It was then that the fox realized his boy was crying. He twisted around to study his face and to be sure, yes, crying, although without a sound, something the fox had never known him to do. The boy hadn't shed tears for a very long time, but the fox remembered always before he had cried out, as if to demand the attention he paid to the curious occurrence of salty water streaming from his eyes. The fox looked at the tears and then grew more confused. There was no scent of blood. He squirmed into the boy's arms to inspect his human more carefully, alarmed that he could have failed to notice an injury. Although his sense of smell was never wrong. No blood, not even the underskin pooling of a bruise or the marrow leak of a cracked bone, which had happened once. You can just see how good this fox's sense of smell is. The car pulled up to the right, and the suitcase beside them shifted. But by its scent, the fox knew it held the boy's clothing, and the things from his room he handled most often. The photo he kept on top of his bureau, and the items he hid in the bottom drawer. He pawed at a corner, hoping to pry the suitcase open enough for the boy's weak nose to smell these favorite things and be comforted. But just then the car slowed again, this time to a crumbling crawl. The boy slumped forward, and his head in his hand. The fox's heartbeat climbed, and the brushy hairs of his tail lifted. The charred metal scent of the father's new clothing was burning his throat. He leaped to the window and scratched at it. Sometimes at his home, his boy would raise a similar glass wall if he did this. He always felt better when the glass wall was lifted. Instead, the boy pulled him down onto his lap again and spoke to his father in a begging tone. The fox had learned the meaning of many human words, and he heard him use one of them now. No. Often the no word was linked to one of the two names he knew, his own and his boys. He listened carefully, but today it was just the no, pleaded to the father over and over. The car juddered to a full stop and tilted off to the right, a cloud of dust rising beyond the window. What do you think's happening? The father reached over the seat again, and after saying something to his son in a soft voice that didn't match his hard lie scent, he grasped the fox by the scruff of the neck. The boy did not resist, so the fox did not resist. He hung limp and vulnerable in the man's grasp, although he was now frightened enough to nip. He would not displease us humans today. The father opened the car door and strode over gravel and patchy weeds to the end of the wood. The boy got out and followed. The father set the fox down, and the fox bounded out of his reach. The fox bounded out of his reach. He locked his gaze on his two humans, surprised to notice that they were nearly the same height now. The boy had grown very tall recently. The father pointed to the woods. The boy looked at his father for a long moment, his eyes streaming again, and then he dried his face with the neck of his shirt and nodded. He reached into his jeans pockets and withdrew an old plastic soldier, the fox's favorite toy. The fox came to alert, ready for the familiar game. His boy would throw the toy and he would track it down, a feat the boy always seemed to find remarkable. He would retrieve the toy and wait with it in his mouth until the boy found him and took it back to toss again. And sure enough, the boy held the toy soldier aloft and then hurled it into the woods. The fox's relief, they were only here to play the game, made him careless. He streaked towards the woods without looking back at his human. If he had, he would have seen the boy wrench away from his father and cross his arms over his face, and he would have returned. Whatever his boy needed, protection, distraction, affection, he would have offered. Instead, he set off after the toy. Finding it was slightly more difficult than usual, as there were so many other fresher odors in the woods, but only slightly. After all, the scent of his boy was also on the toy, the scent he could find anywhere. The toy soldier lay face down at the burled root of a butternut tree, as if he had pitched himself there in despair. His rifle, his butt pressed tirelessly against his face. His rifle, its butt pressed tirelessly against his face, was buried to the hilt in leaf litter. The fox nudged the toy free, took it between his teeth, and rose on his haunches to allow his boy to find them. In the still woods, the only movements were bars of sunlight glinting like green glass through the leafy canopy. He stretched tired. There was no sign of his boy. A prickle of worry shivered up the fox's spine. He dropped the toy and barked. There was no response. He barked again, and again was answered by only silence. If this was a new game, he did not like it. He picked up the toy soldier and began to retrace his trail. As he loped out of the woods, a jay streaked in above him, shrieking. The fox froze, torn. His boy was waiting to play the game. But birds! Hours upon hours he had watched birds from his pen, quivering at the sight of them, slicing the sky as recklessly as the lightning he often saw in summer evenings. The freedom of their flight always mesmerized him. The jay called again, deeper in the forest now, but answered by a chorus of reply. For one more moment, the fox hesitated, peering into the trees for another sight of the electric blue wedge. And then behind him, he heard a car door slam shut, and then another. He bounded at full speed, heedless of the briars that tore at his cheeks. The car's engine roared to life, and the fox skidded to a stop at the edge of the road. His boy rolled down the window and reached his arms out, and as the car sped away in a pelting spray of gravel, the father cried out the boy's name, "Peter!" And the boy cried out the only other name the fox knew, Pax. And with that, I'm going to go and attend to those hooligans over there. I hope you guys enjoyed chapter 1. I will post chapter 2 shortly. Thanks.